The thing that soluble oxalate can do is once we've absorbed more of that, that can be easily trafficked in and out of the cells of the body. And a plant can be using it to draw minerals up out of the soil, do things like that, because oxalate's a mineral chelator. And then the plant can sort of reabsorb it. But plants have pathways, metabolic pathways, essentially, that allow them to manipulate oxalate. We have no such pathways. So we cannot manipulate oxalate once it's in our body. Once it's in our body, it's either going to chew it up because it's crystals, so it's chewing up the gut. If it forms crystals once it's inside the bloodstream, it will chew us up in there too. And the soluble stuff can be taken into the cells because we do understand enough about oxalate in terms of our own biochemistry that our body knows that it needs to secrete it out. It's not something we want to keep. We will produce a certain amount of oxalate, what they call endogenously. So what comes in from your diet is exogenous,
Right.
but what we produce ourselves is endogenous. And that endogenous oxalate, we know how to get rid of it. We secrete it out into the bloodstream. The kidneys typically pick it up, not the only one. And then we get rid of it in the urine. But I'm not sure that we've got a final number from the research, but they kind of estimate that we make maybe 15 to 30 milligrams of oxalate, depending on the source that you look at. So a small amount.
Per day?
Per day, basically.
Really? That sounds
Yeah,
kind of high to me, though.
Well, it would depend on other factors, how much oxidative stress there is in the body,
Okay.
how much.
Each person's different.
Yeah. So, but really, in the grand scheme of things, a small amount.
That's a small amount.
Certainly nothing compared to the 400 milligrams you can take in a half a cup of spinach,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Or a half a cup of almond flour, or So there's
Rhubarb.
lots of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, 750 milligrams in a half a cup of rhubarb.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Our baby amounts in our body are nothing.
Okay.
But that little bit means that our bodies know how to get rid of it. It's a metabolic end point, and our bodies go, right. Once we get to the end of a metabolic process and we've got oxalate potentially as one of the byproducts,
Mm-hmm.
and secretion is what we need. So it's an active transport. It's not necessarily a passive transport. With that said, the cell transporters for a cell that will pull in certain kinds of nutrients may also have the capacity to push out oxalate. But if that cell transporter has an ending here that will fit oxalate as well as some nutrient, the problem is if in the environment around the cell, there's lots of oxalate in that fluid, well, that cell transporter might go out and pick it up and pull it in.
Mm.
So we end up with this situation where we can actually be accumulating oxalate in an organ because we have cell transporters there who are capable of moving it. There's actually more around the cell than there might even be in the cell when it starts. But once that oxalate's inside the cell, it needs energy to get rid of it. So you get this slowdown of perhaps the bandwidth for that cell and what it's supposed to be doing, and an inability for that cell maybe to get rid of it as promptly as it would normally get rid of something that's a metabolic end product. So great examples are sulfate cell transporters. Mm-hmm. Many of the ones that move sulfate will also move oxalate. You have a similar problem with some bicarbonate transporters, cell transporters. A big consumer of bicarbonate, like the pancreas, which is going to secrete enzymes, but also resources that are going to bring up the pH of that food as it exits the stomach. The pancreas is another possible location where people could end up with some oxalate stranded there, disrupting function, and potentially we've got a situation where that chyme exiting the stomach is not going to be brought to the right pH level for the intestines. And it may not be enough to completely disrupt how the intestines function. But if it's at the wrong pH, that might drive inflammation for that leaky gut again. And maybe the pH is not optimal for us to absorb things. And in my mind, probably much more serious is the fact that sulfate transporters in the liver can pick up oxalate, and gallstones can actually be oxalate stones.
Really? Okay.
And you can get liver stones that can also be oxalate.
All right. Not just kidney.
No. So we can end up with oxalate accumulating and causing problems.
Oh my gosh.
And because of this business of you have to secrete it out,
mm-hmm.
If you've got a fluid that it's going to accumulate in, then it can turn up as crystals there. So as I was saying, the breasts for some reason,
Okay.
the joints may be at risk. And when you look at research where they look at people with primary hyperoxaluria, so that they've got a real problem, their body's producing way more even than what's in a crazy high diet. And, transplantation is the thing that saves their lives.
Mm-hmm.
In their case, we know oxalate's accumulating in places like the eyes, in the arteries, in the heart, like all kinds of places where you don't want this stuff.
Right.
So yeah, I think that we really underestimate how problematic this is. And also because oxalate itself is highly oxidative, and we all know how bad oxidative stress is.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's just so many ways this can be functioning. And for us, it's not benign. For plants, benign, because they have metabolic pathways that manage it. We do not. If we could break it down, it'd be a whole different ballgame. But our body is not in any way prepared for the kinds of levels that we can take in. It's prepared for 15 to 30 milligrams a day. It is not prepared for 1500.
Wow.